Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the stream. I hope everyone is having a fantastic day, or as fantastic as can be. Just posting clips or links in places, hopefully drum up some more views or viewers. Alright. And I can go over there. And Alright. OBS is frozen. Again. I can't move anything around, but everything looks good enough, I think. Good morning, Sven. You haven't missed anything other than me faffing around with some settings and now putting on some socks because my feet are cold. How are we doing this morning? All right, we have socks now. And we have water. Good morning, Birdie. Hope you're doing well. Hopefully it's nothing too serious, Sven. Hopefully it's nothing too serious. Good old H2O. Well, good old. I'm not really a fan of H2O, but when one must, one must. Fair enough, fair enough. Really? Okay. We do have a slight problem. This is all messed up. Why is this all messed up? Because I'm streaming. That's probably the reason. Can't use my OBS to adjust things, so we have to do it the long way. Good morning, I'm Kira. It's more of a case-by-case basis, I'm Kira. I'm glad to hear that, Birdie. I think from a narration point of view, the footnote is so disjointed from the story that narrating it at the end doesn't really help. So you kind of want to narrate the footnote when it happens, which doesn't make it a footnote. If that makes sense. Good morning, Zenti. Hope you're doing well. I'm glad to hear that. I think so, I'm in Kira. I really do think so. Because, I mean, at the bottom of the page is not at the end of the story, but on Reddit or as a narration, all footnotes would happen as an appendix rather than a footnote. Because you don't have pages. Something like that. Okay. Good morning, Postmatic, and your spam. Spam of doom. I imagine with something like a Kindle that would also work. I think so. Especially on web pages and web stories. I think the note when it happens in parentheses or however you choose to do it would probably be a better way of doing it. The chat stream is from Twitch and YouTube. There is a Discord server, it's just not part of the stream. Excuse me. Ooh. Like Caius Azriel. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for the noise. What was that? Postmatic. Yeah. Ooh. Stuff and things are happening. Like Caius Azriel with 10 gifted subs. It is very, very much appreciated. Thank you very much. I have no idea what the second noise was. But it's Twitch trying to tell me something. You You can tell I'm a professional streamer. I don't know what the noises mean. Okay. Back to trying to line things up the wrong way. One? No. 650. It is my pleasure. And Postmatic with a gifted sub. Thank you very much. Ooh, we're at level 4. I have no idea what that means, but it's awesome. Level 4 is awesome. Does that mean I'm a level 4 streamer? Do I get to assign my points? Do I get any passives? Oh, it's a hype train. Still have no idea what that is. But it is awesome. Anything that Twitch does is awesome and must be repeated on a... Wait, let me get my contract out. How does it say? Oh, yes. Now I'm a slot machine. Ooh, some bits. 2,500 bits from Lycaria. What the hell? Lycaius. Azrael. Thank you very much for the 2,500 bits. It's very much appreciated. And level 5. Okay. We've beat the all-time high. That's awesome. I haven't even done anything, but thank you very much. Very, very much. Still trying to get my stream aligned. Because it's off center. The also doesn't help them in. Okay. 700. Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's a FOMO thing.
There would be a follower on the horizon.
Well, thank you for the follow. And see, this time Twitch told me, well, maybe I told me what happened. I should probably go and change all the other alerts to something. But thank you very much for the follow. It's very much appreciated. Many, many things happening. Confusing the poor old boomer. Okay. Height is good. Width is good. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now we have a waveform. We can see if that's working nicely. Okay, well, we're doing well there. Waveform is nice and solid and everybody can see it. The only thing I want to crop off another 25, 30 off the top. Yeah, well, it depends on the day. Sometimes YouTube's ahead, sometimes Twitch is ahead. It's very much dependent on how busy the ingestion servers are. But once I get going, it shouldn't really matter that much. Good morning, Lord Vulpix. I hope you're doing well today. Nope. We're gonna go down. I hate OBS. Just stating this as a fact. But fear not, we will get on to the narrations soon enough. We got 7 and 7. 7 people watching on Twitch, 7 people watching on YouTube. That's awesome. Ooh. Yamashisha. Fair enough. I imagine there's quite a few people on both. I do appreciate the support. But if we can get 10 and 10, means we're in the top 1% on both Twitch and YouTube. Also, the numbers used to say, okay, that's close enough. We can all see what's happening. We've got time markers. We've got DB markers. More importantly, we have chat. We have scrolling text-ish. And I think we're there. We're there. I've got a moth sitting on my screen. Not this one, the second screen. Funny. Just defiantly sitting there. Oblivious to the world. Suppose you can't be defiant and oblivious at the same time, but I'm busy annoying him with the cursor. Anyway. Hydration. Oh, need to put my phone on charge. Oh, sorry. Should have done this before the stream. But I completely forgot. Okay. Okay. Oh. You suppose you can. Now what? Hello? Can you hear me? Test, test. What the hell's going on today? My stream says I'm streaming it. Oh, no, wait, I'm not. Okay. Yeah, the internet just had a spotty lag session. It upset the Twitch machine, or the streaming machine. I think we should be back up to speed. Okay. Awesome. Right, so today we're doing one re-Tifos, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 Tifos. So, no series today. Fair enough, fair enough. Alright, on to the story. If this is the story I think it is, it's quite funny. If it's the story I think it is, I think I've done it recently. Really? Really? Give me a second. Apparently the... Hello? 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 Okay. My VPN disconnected. Testing, testing. Are we back? It is now... we've got 12 viewers on Twitch. It should disconnect more often. Okay. I think we're back. Because, of course, it's Monday. Obviously, these things are going to happen. All right. Right. Cool. I think we're good. Twitch? Are we twitching? We are twitching on Twitch. It's awesome. And we are streaming on YouTube. Cool. Time for some work. If we're finished with the disconnecting, that is. Greetings, ladies and metal gents. Nope. Want that a bit closer. Greetings, ladies and metal gents, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series. Nope. Greetings, ladies and metal gents, and welcome to this latest edition of re-Tifos, where I take old stories I've narrated and update into modern audio standards. This particular story is called Buck Thunderpunch, Inferno of Justice. The ship fell out of hyperspace with a shuddering crash, the roar of the engines replaced with the strident tones from a dozen different alarms. The LEP began racing between consoles, shutting down non-essential systems and diverting their power to life support. His two crewmates on the bridge were focused on their own stations. His two crewmates on the bridge were focused on their own stations. Reb was trying desperately to keep the reactor stable, while Sasset attempted the same with the misbehaving hyperspace window generator. Either could rip the ship apart upon failure, so Lalep did his best not to distract them as they worked. Good morning, Shadow, Aura. Didn't see you there in between all the disconnects. Hope you are having a great day. Not to distract them as they worked. Finally, after minutes that felt like hours, the ship was safely under control and dead in the water. Good morning, Anthony. Hope you're doing well. And dead. The reactor stack was dark and would remain so until it cooled enough to effect repairs. We'll be here a while, Rareb said. We'll be here a while, Rareb sighed. That exit tore half of our radiators. If the reactor was up, we'd have to turn it off regardless. We'll have to proceed directly to the nearest port and hope that it's short enough hop that we don't overheat. Where's the nearest port anyway? Sasset asked. Lalep swung around to the flickering navigation Lalep swung around to the flickering navigation console, punching in a request. It's getting a fix. Hold on, he muttered. Looks like we're, He broke off and stared numbly at the readout, his skin flushing pale blue with fear. Captain, what? Sisette asked, concern in his voice. Where are we? Human space, Lelep croaked. We're several light years within their borders. The other two looked at him with puzzled expressions. The humans are our allies, Rereb objected. Isn't that a good thing? Just because they'll help us doesn't mean that we want their help, Lelep retorted. Have either of you ever met a human? Well, both shook their heads. I don't understand why you're so concerned, Rereb said. I've only ever heard good things about humans. They protect planets from invaders, help the sick and injured, fix societal problems. From everything I've read, they're a race of heroes. Okay, we've got 10 and 12, so we're in the top 1% of both platforms. Yeah! Anyway. Of heroes. That's precisely the issue, Lelep moaned. They are, every damn one of them, ever since the Lelarathi, idiots that they are, decided to give them their prototyping technology. We use Lelathi prototyping, Sisette pointed out. Everyone does. It's convenient. What does that have to do with anything? It's mentally controlled construction, Lelep hissed, and they handed it to a race of perpetually hallucinating fantasy-prone egoists. And they handed it to a perpetually hallucinating fantasy-prone egoists, undisciplined apes that see self-focused patterns in every meaningless blip of data. They didn't have the control to handle that kind of power safety. It took very little time before one of them managed to convince the prototyping device to modify itself. And from there, he shuddered, we have to leave as soon as we can. But Captain, we can't go anywhere until the reactor cools, Rerib pointed out. We literally have no choice. He stopped talking as a horrid screech ran through the ship. The crew exchanged a look and immediately turned back to the status displays. Flashing alarm lights had appeared on the console monitoring cargo bay containment, and in moments, they were staring at a video feed of the aft bay fall. The cargo bay had disappeared, replaced by a swarm of brutish creatures that were pounding at the doors. They were pounding at the bay doors. They were pounding at the hold's door with worrying strength. Foam dripped from their fanged mouths as they battered the hatch, denting the metal. What in the Primarch's night are those things? Rerib asked in horror. How did they get on the ship? It doesn't matter, Lelep said quietly. It's already started. We're going to be fine. Just try not engage the narrative any more than you have to. What? Sisette asked. Captain, I don't... He was interrupted by a deafening crackle of static from overhead that resolved into a deep, gravelly voice loud enough to shake dust from the structural beams of the bridge. Come in, alien vessel, the voice boomed. This is Captain Buck Thunderpunch of the Steel Raptor. Looks like you've got yourselves a little Looks like you've got yourself a little rabbit space gorilla problem. The crew was still in a bemused contemplation of that assertion. As the crew was still in a bemused contemplation of that assertion, a loud crash echoed from aft. The video feed showed dozens of the apparently rabid creatures pouring through the hatch from the cargo bay into the ship itself. Don't answer, Lelep hissed. Don't engage with him at all. Those things are here for him, not us. The other two looked at him incredulously. Respectfully, Captain, they're not running towards him, Rerib said. It's accept his help or die. Lelep shrugged and shook his head. Don't say I didn't warn you, he sighed. Captain Thunderpunch, Rerib responded, keying the communicator. We're dead in space and have some sort of large aggressive life forms on our ship. Any assistance that you can render would be appreciated."
10-4, comrade,
came the deafening response.
"Hang tight. Old Buck Thunderpunch will handle this, or Buck Thunderpunch ain't. Old Buck Thunderpunch will handle this, or Buck. No. Old Buck Thunderpunch will handle this, or Buck Thunderpunch and name ain't."
There was a crash from the bridge's door as it was battered aside with terrifying strength. One of the creatures from the cargo bay stood there, slavering jaws wide as it screamed ferociously. At the three petrified crewmen, it charged across the decking and was upon them in an instant, its mammoth arms reaching for Reb, and then it was hurled across the bridge as an equally gigantic figure kicked through the front view screen in a shower of crystal fragments, one with the combat boot connecting firmly with the creature's chest.
"Buck Thunderpunch!"
Buck Thunderpunch finished, lips quirked in a rakish grin around a smouldering stub of his cigar. The sound of an electric guitar inexplicably filled the bridge with energetic power chords. Lalep averted his eyes, but Sisette and Reb were dumbstruck as they looked at their savior. He was huge, layered with slabs of muscle that flexed hypnotically under his tanned, dirt-smeared skin. His dirty upper garment left his arms and shoulders exposed, and sweat glistened on his sweat glistened on his biceps as he picked up a bit of twisted metal piping from the deck. Two lenses of darkened glass obscured his eyes as he turned towards the downed invader. The creature looked up at him and let loose another rage-filled scream that was cut harshly short when Buck Thunderpunch hurled the pipe like a javelin into its open mouth, impaling the head and pinning the creature's corpse to the wall.
"Pipe down!"
Buck Thunderpunch said, deadpan. Sisette's eyes darted between the dead creature and the shattered view screen, its jagged edges opening directly to the vacuum of space. "How is that? How are we not dead?" he rasped.
"The air doesn't matter," Lalep said morosely from his seat on the floor. "Just, let it happen."
More screams came from the back of the bridge as the creatures hurled themselves through the door at Buck Thunderpunch, who had produced a massive combat knife, seemingly out of nowhere. He brandished his knife in one mighty hand as the other curled around to Pepper. He brandished the knife in one meaty hand as the other curled into a fist and slammed into his attacker's face. Sisette and Reb stared transfixed as the combat unfolded with enthusiastic accompaniment. Sisette and Reb stared transfixed as the combat unfolded with enthusiastic accompaniment by the disembodied guitar. It was dizzying to look directly at Buck Thunderpunch while he fought. It was dizzying to look directly at Buck Thunderpunch while he fought, his position and pose seeming to change abruptly between attacks with little regard for continuity of motion. I don't understand," Sisette croaked, his eyes wide as Buck Thunderpunch threw a gorilla out the hole in the view screen. Its screams carried clearly through the bridge as its head swelled up and burst into a shower of gore. None of this makes sense."
"We're being saved," Lalep said, pronouncing the word like it left a foul taste in his mouth. "Isn't it wonderful?"
It's alarming," Reb said, watching Buck Thunderpunch pull out a gigantic revolver and punch another gorilla in the face. He flew backwards as if hit by a meteor, slamming into another behind it. "I'm beginning to question what I thought I knew about physics."
Don't think about it too much," Lep advised. "Physics is working normally, it's just not the most important set of rules right now. Not the most important set of rules right now."
Sisette stared at him. But that's not how the universe works," he objected.
"That's your opinion, not his," Lalep said. A metal ball flew across the bridge to embed itself into the wall directly beside Lalep's head. The other two flinched and cried out, but Lalep merely glanced at it and rolled his eyes. "Dramatic," he grumbled. "Just sit down and wait. She'll be over soon." They watched as the gorillas continued to pour into the bridge compartment one by one, each receiving a punch that left them sprawled across the deck. The bodies of the fallen seemed to vanish whenever the crew's attention was elsewhere, save for the corpses still hanging pinned from a pipe. Finally, the stream of attacking gorillas tapered off until one particularly large specimen was the only one left. Unlike the others, it was dressed in a black martial. Unlike the others, it was dressed in a black martial arts uniform and brandished a slightly curved sword. It threw a small spiked disc of metal at Buck Thunderpunch, who picked it out of the air effortlessly, before counterattacking with a punch to the gorilla's face. The massive animal didn't stop after one blow, but Buck Thunderpunch kept hitting it until it had dropped its sword and was now staggering unsteadily. "Hey, fellas!" Buck Thunderpunch drawled at some point. He had lost the shirt that he was wearing. "Did you say your ship was broke?" The Lep shook his head urgently, but Rereb cleared his throat. Yes, Captain Thunderpunch," he said hesitantly, his eyes still on the tottering gorilla. "The reactor stack needs to cool before we can—" "Buck Thunderpunch don't know much about reactor stacks," Buck Thunderpunch replied. Readying a boxing machine pistol. "Ready," Thunderpunch replied. Readying a boxy machine pistol and turning it to punch the gorilla in the stomach. It let out its breath in a gasp and haunched over. Buck Thunderpunch grabbed the entire head in one hand and dragged it towards the navigation console. "Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go," Lep muttered, staring dully forward. Buck Thunderpunch slammed the gorilla's skull into the console. It exploded in a shower of sparks, causing the gorilla's limbs to flail and jerk spasmodically for a few seconds before it slumped and fell to the floor. The console, nevertheless, appeared undamaged, and all across the bridge the power readouts were returning to normal. Buck Thunderpunch shifted his cigar to the other side of his mouth and grinned, displaying possibly white teeth. "Sometimes you just need to use your head," he quipped. "Kill me," Lilep whispered. "All right, my blue amigos." "Oh, all right, my blue amigos," Buck Thunderpunch said as the guitar played a triumphant riff. "Looks like you're all fixed up." "Thank you," Sisette said dazedly. "No problemo, mamacita. No problemo, mamacita," Buck Thunderpunch replied, ambling over and putting Sisette into a passionate kiss. After some time, he released the stunned crewman, adjusted his leather jacket, and walked over to climb through the hole in the view screen. "You folks ever need help again, just holler for old Buck Thunderpunch," Buck Thunderpunch said, flipping them a lazy salute and climbing onto an impressively large two-wheeled motor vehicle. The engine roared loud enough to vibrate the decking, and an anomalous cloud of smoke issued from the rear wheel as he sped off into the vacuum of space. When it cleared, he was gone, and the view screen was intact. "What?" Rereb said flatly. How? This is really all the Lelarathi," Lelep muttered. "This is really all on the Lelarathi," Lelep muttered. "Bunch of irresponsible reprobates, the lot of them." "He signed my memories," Sisette said, poking at the suddenly generous chest where 1-800-Thunder was scrawled all across blocky handwriting. "Captain, I don't have memories." "I told you not to engage the narrative," Lelep said, standing up to look around the pristine bridge. The only indication that something had happened to the ship was the gorilla corpse pinned to the bulkhead and the surprisingly buxom navigator. He could hear the faint roar of the Steel Raptor's engine echoing through the void. "We should be able to make it out of here," he said at last. "Set course straight for the dock, though. We need to reach the port before the reactor realizes he didn't know how to fix it." Rereb nodded and began to prepare the ship to depart. He seemed relieved to have an order to follow, even if it was a somewhat nonsensical one. "Our species doesn't even have memories," Sisette grumbled, prodding at the anomalous revision onto his... "Our species doesn't even have memories," Sisette grumbled, prodding at the anomalous revision to his torso. "Yes, well," Lelep said wearily, "that's your opinion, not his." End of story. When delusion shapes the world. Good morning, Lord Draco, 76. I hope you are doing well today. Or tonight, whichever daytime, nighttime, time unit, whichever one you want. Thank you, Lord Draco. Still getting over a pretty nasty migraine. Technically, this is day 3 of migraine. If it's not fixed, or if it's not sorted by tomorrow, I'm going to the doctor. Yippee! Yes. We don't like physics. Me replace physics with my own set of rules. That's what I've always said. I reject your reality and substitute my own. Alrighty, now we're on to 5 new... 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 new. Is that right? 4, and if we're feeling good after the 4th one, 5th. Thank you, thank you for the kind words, long hauler. I'm sure I'll be fine. It's just, I think it might be partially sinus infection. Even after the surgery, those happen. The sinuses haven't drained properly and just build pressure. It's not fun. Not much I can do about it. Well, there is, but I don't have the stuff to do something about it. And I have ordered it, so we'll see. It's nothing life-threatening or health-threatening. I just have a massive migraine/headache. Yeah. So I only wore the safari gear for videos on YouTube. I didn't wear them for normal streams. This is just a normal stream. I'm not using the video for YouTube videos. It adds a significant amount of overhead to the editing. So we decided to go back to the old way, which is just narrating. The video is just for the streams now. I don't really need the safari suit. Also, it's still in South Africa. So I couldn't wear it even if I wanted to. I did try order some World War II authentic jackets. Officers' jackets and stuff, but apparently there weren't many officers with a 48 to 51 inch chest. Yeah, definitely getting old school. Now all I need is a blanket fort and then we'll be kicking it super old school, but I've spent a lot of effort getting my studio ready, so not going to be doing blanket forts. I think... No. I was about to say, I think somebody has added me or mentioned me in their stories, but not as a narrator. I'm not sure, Yamashisha. I'd have to start that all from scratch. I'm in a different country at the moment, so... Well, I've immigrated to a different country. So, starting up a fish tank again is not at the top of my list. And,
people seem to like the full screen scrolling text anyway, so I couldn't really use the video for anything. Any video I put in reduces the scrolling text, and some people like reading ahead, some people don't. So if I cut off the ahead part, some people don't really like that. Coffee! Yummy! I think my wife used her coffee when making this cup of coffee. Good evening, Commodore Grey Talon. Grey Talon. Or Commander Grey Talon. Hope you're doing well. Ooh. Her coffee's not as strong as mine. And it's got a bit of a more, I don't know, different taste. Oh, thank you very much, Shadow Aura. It's very much appreciated. Every little bit of sharing helps. Yeah, very much. My wife isn't a big, strong coffee fan, so she has more tasty coffee. I just have strong coffee. Well, we just use instant coffee, not filter coffee. Because, well, I'm the only person who drinks filter coffee. And making a whole pot just for me is a bit much. I've been eyeing out an espresso-like machine at some point, but I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it being cheap. It feels like it would be really expensive. Oh, thank you, Commander Grey Talon. Thank you very much. Glad you enjoy the content. Well, it's not only the too large. It's also then you have to leave it on heated the whole day so the coffee gets burnt. But I mean, you do get the single cup machines. But I'm not a coffee snob. I'll drink coffee, whatever the form is. Fair enough. Well, I mean, caffeine's a vasodilator, so it restricts the blood flow to the brain, which, well, all throughout the body, and it does decrease. Salt does it as well. This headache is, I have no idea what it is. I've done all the usual stuff. It just doesn't want to go away. Which makes me think it's more my sinus than a migraine. Alrighty, on to the next story. I'm sure it will, Lord Draco. Like I said, if it's not better by tomorrow, I'll just head to the doctor. You can give me one of those paracetamol drips. And normally knocks it for a ball of shit. Well, knocks it for 6, but home run? I suppose it's the American version. Problem is, if it's too hot, you melt the straw, unless you've got a non-plastic straw. And a non-cardboard straw. So, I mean, the very weird thing with this particular migraine, it's on the wrong side for me. Almost always I get my migraine on the right-hand side. This one's on the left-hand side, so no idea why. Okay, so on to the story. Greetings, ladies and metalgents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Humans Are Afraid of War, written by firefighter Raven. Gesilik leaned back in his favorite chair and felt something pop before sitting back up. He liked the spot in the bar. He could see all the various races come and go. Some would even ask for his advice. He was an old spacer, and his knowledge of the sector was vast. It said he's visited almost every system and most inhabited planets in his 170 galactic years. And some of the young would ask for stories of his adventures. But he was tired of traveling and settled down on the station orbiting the plasmid miasma. So, he was only slightly surprised when a tall, reptilian-like alien approached him. The being looked familiar, but he couldn't quite place which race it was. At least two and... That is very weird. You're combining the fractions of imperial with metric. At least 2.5 meters tall, more muscular arms, bipedal, and a torso covered in tough, leather-like plates. Its head was triangular, and a blunt face containing 6 eyes, a pair of nostrils, and a wide mouth with dozens of small but sharp-looking teeth. It also had 8 pronounced fangs, 4 on top and 4 on bottom. It wore only boots, a type of pants, and a utility harness on its torso. "You are Gasilik the Thorough," the alien put it bluntly. Gasilik stared up at the tall being before saying, "I am, and who do I have the pleasure of speaking with?" "I am Bahazaman of the Cadriacs," he answered. Ah, yes, the Cadriacs. He remembered now, his mind searching for what he knew about them. No wonder he didn't recognize them. They were rarely seen outside their body armor and enclosed helmets. They were a warlike race from out near the rim. They only appeared in this sector 20 years ago by raiding the outer worlds. 5 years after that, they carved themselves a foothold in the sector at the expense of the Faturi. Without asking, the Cadric sat down next to the Gasilik. "I understand that you know many things about this sector." Bazan. Buhazum started. Buhazum stated, blunt and straight to the point. Gasilik thought to himself before answering, "Yes, I am well traveled. Good. Will you come with me?" Bahazum added. Taken aback, Gasilik replied, "Why in the hell would I do that?" "To meet my superiors. You'll be well compensated," Bahazum said. Bahazum said. Getting paid does change things, Gasilik thought to himself. "And how far would I have to go?" he asked. Bahazum promptly replied, "Compartment 10, level 1. So they were at the station, and in one of the first-class quarters. Interesting, Gasilik thought before replying, "Lead on!" It took about 10 minutes to reach the compartment, and when the door opened, he was slightly surprised to see just how many Cadrics were in there. There were maybe 11 of them, but after studying the Cadrics for a moment, he concluded 6 were guards. Unlike Bahazum, they wore a variety of raiment. They wore a variety of raiment that concealed their bodies.
It suddenly occurred to Gessler that since they were rarely seen without their helmets and body armor, they were essentially in disguise and able to move about freely with no one the wiser. He started to wonder just how many Cadricks were hiding in plain sight across the sector. Bahazim stepped forward and bowed. "This is the Galsec of Thero, as you ordered, your majesty." Bahazim stepped aside to the others. Bahazim stepped aside so the others could see Gaselek. Finding out he was meeting royalty caught him off guard, but he managed to recover. He gave a bow and spoke, "Your Majesty," and then added, "I apologize, but I do not know who is who." A richly dressed Cadric stepped forward. "I am Mbasa, Vestas to Empress Shiptu, second wife of Emperor Anakar. Emperor of Anunnaki the Fourth," he said, while using a sweeping gesture to the Empress. Gaselik turned and bowed to the Empress. "My apologies, Your Majesty, for not knowing who you are." The Empress just gave a regal nod of her head. To be honest, Gaselik couldn't tell the difference between male and female Cadrics. Or were they all female, he wondered. Another Cadric stepped forward. "Grand Stragdicto and Shag Kashnana." Grand Stractico. "Grand Stractico and Shag Kushana." The Grand Strakita stepped forward and pushed a button on the console. A map of the sector appeared, and the political boundaries were marked out. "We are embarking on a new campaign, and we need information about the races that might be involved, what their military capabilities are, who their allies are, and which are their most important worlds," he said. Gaselet was shocked at the question, and without thinking he uttered, "I can't do that. Help you kill an untold number of sentients." Empress Shiptu nodded to Inabusa. Empress Shiptu nodded to Inabusa, who then stepped forward. "The Empress understands your reluctance to offer a compensation." The Empress understands your reluctance and offers a compensation of 2 million galactic credits. Gaselik almost fell over from shock. He could almost buy his own station with that much. Not a big one, but still. After wrestling with his conscience, he agreed to the proposal. The Empress nodded in satisfaction. Grand Stracto Inchak Anna pointed at an area of the map. "We plan to attack these humans and absorb their territory into the Empire. We've heard rumors they do not maintain a large fleet, and that they are afraid of war, that they'll negotiate a way out of it." Gaselik stared at them in horror. "You mean to attack the humans?" taking care to pronounce it correctly for them. "Yes, in 2 standard months." Yes, in 2 standard months, the Grand Strakito informed him. Yes, in 2 standard months, the Grand Strakito. Yes, in 2 standard months, the Grand Strakito informed him. After Gaselek regained his composure, he said, "No one in their right mind attacks the humans." The Strakito in Shakush-Ana laughed. "Why is that? They barely have a dozen systems. We have thousands. What kind of threat could a race be afraid of? What kind of threat could a race afraid to fight be to us? Ask the Takarians. Ask the Takasians," Gaselik muttered to himself, not intending for the Kurtrix to hear. But their hearing was better than he knew. "Who are these Takasians? How can we contact them?" "By summoning their ghosts," Gaselik thought to himself. "You can't. They are extinct in this sector, and there are only rumors of small drifter fleets of survivors, never staying in one place too long. And these humans are responsible, so they beat some minor power, probably only a few planets, and we're supposed to be afraid of them." The Grand Strakito and Shagkash Ana scoffed. Gaslick replied, Over 80 galactic years ago, the Takazians once controlled most of the sector, using his finger to indicate where it was. 138 systems, 600 habitable planets and moons, hundreds more with vast resources to be harvested. Including the dead rock we currently orbit, Gaslick finished. For a moment, Gaslick thought he saw doubt in some of their faces, but not being familiar with them, he wasn't sure. Grand Strakito in Shagkush Ana was not one of them. We are the Kodreks and fear no one, especially a race afraid of war, even if they won 1 decade ago. Go on with your explanation as to why we shouldn't attack them, the Empress said. All of the Kodreks seemed shocked as she spoke. Your Majesty, this alien is not worthy to hear you speak, Inabusa asked. Inabasa asked. Inabasa exclaimed. Grand Strakita Inshak Kush Ana also spoke. Your Majesty, forgive me, but the second Empress, you are only here in a ceremonial role. With a glare, the Empress addressed them both. With a glare, the Empress addressed them both. That is usually so, but I feel this isn't important enough for the Emperor to hear all of it, and not just selected tidbits. She addressed the Strakito directly. Would you like me to contact my husband, the Emperor, and see how he responds to my break-in ceremony, especially after I tell him how you are ignoring the Theron's warning? I like this one, Gaslick thought to himself. Both of the Kodreks acquiesced to the Empress. Looking back towards Gaslick, please continue. Please continue, she ordered. Yes, Your Majesty, Gaslick bowed and replied. The humans are not afraid of war because of what the enemy may do. Humans are afraid of war because it can make them become. Humans are afraid of war. Humans are afraid of what it might make them become, Gaslick started. I had a human friend long ago that once explained it to me. Like you, the Terkesians saw them as easy pickings, Gaslick explained. The humans were new to the galactic community and had just started to expand out of their home system. And when the Terkesians found out that they just had time... And when the Terkesians found out just how much time passed between the humans' first steps into space and how it took almost 2 centuries to leave their home system, they assumed that they weren't very smart either. I found out from my friend later that it took them so long to leave their cradle because they had been warring amongst themselves almost the entire time, Gaslick stressed. The Empress spoke up again. So they were fighting a civil war that whole time? No, Your Majesty. They were never a single government in the first place. They only formed that after finding out that other races existed. A damaged ship inadvertently fell out of FTL in their system. The crew was dead, so the only source of information was the ship. So they examined the ship and reverse-engineered what they found, mixed with their technology. Gaslick added, It had long been a dream of the humans to find life outside their world, so they were ecstatic to meet other races. They explored, they traded, they shared knowledge freely. So they were caught off guard when the Terkesian fleet entered their home systems and attacked them without warning. The humans suffered enormous casualties at first, but they weren't helpless, Gaslick said. They'd fought wars amongst themselves for almost their entire existence, and they were very good at it. But they were comparatively novices in deep space combat. It took them months to drive the invaders out, and the cost was high. It took them months to drive the invaders out, and the cost was high. For both sides. Gaslick paused. I've heard rumors of the causation. For both sides, Gaslick paused. I've heard rumors that Terkesian survivors were traumatized by their later engagements with the humans, especially the ground forces. As the departing act of defiance, the Terkesian launched a missile containing a biological weapon at Earth, the human cradle world. My human friend told me it caused an ecological disaster on their planet. Vast swaths of the planet became sterile. The biological agents were less effective against humans than the Tarkasian had hoped. The humans had a long history of dealing with virulent and deadly diseases, which helped to protect them from the biological agents. It just made them sick, but only killed the weakest of them, Gasadek explained. Unfortunately for the Tarkasian, this included large numbers of their youngest children. Gasadek continued. As my friend told it, they could forgive the initial invasion. It wasn't something they hadn't done in their internal conflicts. They might have answered the ecological devastation. They might have answered the ecological devastation of their world with a punitive expedition against the Tarkasians. Something of equivalent damage. But the Tarkasians killed their children by the millions, and that enraged them. Most races only have a couple words that refer to revenge. The humans have a dozen, and none of them are good, Gasadek explained. Vendetta, revenge, a reckoning, retribution, reprisals. Reprisals. Vendetta, revenge, a reckoning, retribution, reprisals, retaliation, vengeance, an eye for an eye, vindictive, and others. But the Tarkasians' actions brought one of the worst types to the borders. The humans called it blood vengeance. What the Tarkasians did could only be answered with their blood, and lots of it. My human friend explained that humans' race contains a darkness inside their soul that they fight to suppress. When it escapes and takes over an individual, the death and destruction they cause can ruin dozens of lives, Gasadek continued. When that darkness escapes and runs free through their entire race, then it can inflict horrors beyond your imagination. He once showed me their history, and I thought that I'd seen enough in my lifetime that nothing could shock me. I was wrong. The things they'd done to each other were the most horrific things I'd ever seen. And that was to each other. So imagine what would happen to an alien race. And this act brought out the very worst of them. It was like they went insane with grief, Gasadek said. They combined their things learned from captured Tarkasian technology with their own. These new warships were black as night, with wings to make them look like they're some kind of nightmarish bird. Their body armor was jet black, with their helmets stylized into monstrous faces. Not just things from their nightmares, but from the Tarkasian too. They called this part of psychological warfare. Gasadek shuddered at the thought. They attacked their opponents' minds, not like psychics or... They attack their opponent's minds, not like a psychic or something, but by bringing your deepest fears to life. This is what traumatized the Tarkasian survivors so badly. They couldn't understand the humans' ways of making wars. They stand up and fight when necessary. But humans prefer to use tricks and deception and mind games. They were like spirits, always striking where the Tarkasian didn't expect them to. Destroy something vital or kill a Tarkasian shelters and vanish. Destroy something vital, or kill some Tarkasian soldiers and vanish before guards could respond. But things were different now. When their fleet came roaring out of their territories, they did not sneak, but bellowed like charging Gannok beasts. They wanted the Tarkasian to know that they were coming, and they left a trail of destruction anywhere they went. Military or civilian, nothing Tarkasian was left. No ships, no bases, no industries, and no Tarkasian. Those that didn't flee were roasted in nuclear fire or died choking on the dust flung into the air as human mass drivers lobbed asteroids at their colonies. Even abandoned facilities and colonies were obliterated like they didn't even want a memory of the Tarkasian. They didn't even bother garrisoning the worlds they took intact. They wrecked everything Tarkasian and left. This tactic also made it hard for the Tarkasian to determine where the humans would strike next, and left them running around to places still smoldering from the human attacks, but no humans were there. But there were times where the humans stayed and ambushed the Tarkasian ships that stayed. But there were times when the humans stayed and ambushed the Tarkasian ships that arrived. Their wreckage orbited a dead world. The humans left the Tarkasian homeworld for last, and after 5 years of war, they were ready for the end and surrounded the planet. Gasilik finished. What happened to the Tarkasian homeworld? The Empress asked. Gasilik pointed out the window before saying, Look for yourself. We're in orbit above it. The humans renamed it after the war was over. Once the war was finished and their children were avenged, they stepped back from their insanity and took stock of what they had done. They had a word for it: genocide. There was something from their past that brought great hatred towards the ones to carry it out. It was something from their past that brought great hatred towards the ones to carry it out, and now their entire race was stained with that crime. So they pulled back and abandoned all but the systems they now possess. But before they withdrew, they renamed the Tarkasian homeworld by Asma and requested it be used by everyone else as a reminder. Gasilik said. No one was eager to draw the humans' ire, so they agreed. A reminder of what? A reminder of what? Yeah, it would probably be xenocide more than genocide, but it's a minor thing. A reminder of what? What? A reminder of what? Of what they would do to anyone else that attacked them, one of the cadrics he didn't know the name of said. Gasilik thought for a moment. Well, yes, but that wasn't why they did it. The term miasma was from one of their earliest myths, a term for a type of guilt that runs so deep that it permanently stains all of their race and their blood. It affects all of them, even the ones living today. They collectively let that darkness run free, and the results were so horrific that they don't feel they can be forgiven, only atoned for. Every year they mark the fall of the Tarkasian homeworld, not with celebration, but reminders of what they did. Their avoidance of war is not to protect themselves. It is to protect others from them. He could tell that only the Empress truly got his point. The rest of them, he didn't seem convinced, and Grand Strakito and Shag-Kash Ana still thought their military was too superior to lose. Gasilik sat in his favorite chair, enjoying just being amongst others. It was 3 years ago this week that he tried to convince the cadrics that attacking the humans was a bad idea, and that killing their kids was a worse idea. And now they were losing the war badly. Of the 138 systems they started with, they have less than 21 left. But not all of those systems fell to the humans. 57 of them broke away from their own empire and allied with the humans. They are led by a very smart empress, who not only listened to my advice, but took it a step further. When her foolish husband allowed Grand Strakito and Shag-Kash Ana to attack the humans, after the Grand Strakito and Shag-Kash Ana tried to intimidate the humans by glassing several civilian colonies, she sent a message to the humans. She offered a solution, allowing them to get revenge but avoid making the same mistakes as before. She would break away from the Empire with as many systems as possible and ally with the humans. Cadric civilians could flee to her new empire for safety. Her forces could even help evacuate those who surrendered, including military personnel. Meanwhile, the humans could wreck her former husband's empire as they liked. She also told them that she would be handing over any of the officers responsible for glassing the human colonies for trial. Gasilik looked towards the scene. Gasilik looked forward to seeing Grand Strakito in Shag-Kash Ana on trial. End of story.
My nose hairs are fighting with my mustache again. Yeah, at least one of them paid attention. I'm doing okay, Lord Draco. Just random shooting pains through my eye. You know, usual migraine stuff. Now just closing my left eye, because it's sore. Well, that's where the pain is. But anyway, not the first time I've narrated through a migraine. Stretch. Good morning, Joseph. Hope you're doing well. Yeah. Just got to keep on keeping on. Come on, Shisha. When you own your own business, like I do, this being my business, you don't really get days off. Can't call in sick. Your boss knows when you're lying. And your boss is a real arsehole. Knows all your weaknesses. Knows you backwards. Fair enough, Poster. I mean, I had a super hot shower just before the stream. I relaxed all the muscles in my head and neck. And I took some painkillers. But, you know, those wear off over time. It's not too bad. It's not the worst migraine I've had. Funny enough, the worst migraine I had was after my emergency sinus surgery. Some of you might ask, how can you have an emergency sinus surgery? So, I had a massive sinus infection for like 6 months. Went to my ENT, and he was like, you got bone spurs and stuff in your sinuses. It's clogging drainage and stuff. We'll go in. We'll get rid of them. It's a pretty simple surgery. So I did that. Well, no, I went. Mine was a step further. So they drained it. They got rid of all the infection. They cleared the sinuses all the way up, removing bone spurs or any obstructions. Technically, I had a nose job as well because they changed the shape of my nose a tiny bit just to allow better drainage. And that was great. A week after the surgery, I burst a blood vessel in my sinus. So I was just bleeding. The worst blood nose you can imagine. One I could literally have died from if I didn't go to hospital. Because there's no way to stop the bleeding because you can't put pressure on it. So that was the emergency sinus surgery. They had to go in again and cauterize it. But I don't know what they did to my neck. After that surgery, I was in so much pain from a migraine that I couldn't move. I just lay there. And then just every time a nurse walked past, I'm like, can you just give me a painkiller? Something for a migraine. And it took them 6 hours. So I lay there in the worst pain migraine ever for 6 hours. And I mean, it's not their fault. They're not allowed to give medication. But still, it was not fun. But eventually they got a hold of the doc. And then they gave me the good stuff. So once they gave me the good stuff, I was good. I was happy. I was flying. Because my ENT, when I say I'm in pain, he's like, okay, you're in pain. Not, oh my God, I need an aspirin or something. It's like, well, if you're telling me you're in pain, you're in pain. You need drugs. And let's be honest, this is the guy I trusted to cut my throat open. So I trust this doctor. Literally, my profession was in his hands. So out of all my doctors, he's probably the top that I trust, and then my GP is the second. But you can't really call you GP when you're in hospital. Yeah, well, we're getting there. So, can we see the scar? I think the scar is still there. Yeah. It took 6 months of recovery, but I think we're good. This was last year already. Last year, February, where I had my throat surgery, my voice surgery. My second voice surgery. Yeah, it'll be very hard to get a new doctor, but I shouldn't really need one, hopefully. As long as I look after my voice, I shouldn't damage it in any way to require surgery. That's why I'm a bit more picky now with how long I narrate and pushing through stuff. Don't want to go do the surgery thing again. Yeah, I had that in... once the doctor started giving me painkillers, then I felt no pain. And it wasn't even like it was super... it was not like opioid-based or anything like that. I can't tell you what it was, but it was pure magic in a bottle. And that's what I can tell you. No pain. I can sleep. Yeah, same, long hauler, same. My boss sleeps with my wife too. At least he also spoils her, so suppose that's a consolation. I got lots of docs here, so the GPs I'm not too worried about. The specialist surgeon, I don't know whether I'd go with another one or just go back to South Africa, and that's also an option. Apparently, he does, my voice surgeon, does have several people from around the world that they have a problem travel to South Africa to see him. But yeah, so I mean, technically, so my voice surgery was to correct partial vocal cord paralysis. I still have partial vocal cord paralysis. There's nothing you can do to fix it, but the surgery was to mitigate the effects. So it gives me more of a range. Also means my vocal cords don't work quite as hard to produce the sounds. Well, do what I can. Do what I can. Look, since I've become a voice actor, I've had communications with other voice actors or voice actors that, or people who deal with voice actors, and sometimes you can't protect your voice. Sometimes the worst one I've ever heard was a lady who was a pretty prominent voice actor in South Africa, coughed or sneezed wrong. She got a flu, and she coughed or sneezed wrong and strained her voice for 6 months. So she was out of work for 6 months just because she sneezed wrong. So that's how finicky the voice is. Not a problem, Longhorner. Not a problem. I'm glad they help. I'm glad they help. Yeah. It is so easy to permanently damage your vocal cords. I'm not even going like polyps, hemorrhages, and scarring. Just strain. Because a strained voice isn't like a sprained ankle or something. It can be a permanent thing, and it can take months, if not years, to heal. But that's depressing crap. Let's get on to some stories. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Endless, written by Possible Letters 42. When this signal was first picked up, no one knew how long it had been transmitting. The carrier wave and transponder ID were unlike any seen in common galactic communication. Most believed it was a trap. This was the first belief. It remained the most common belief. When it did not stop after several years, others believed that it was a warning beacon of some sort. This belief was also common given its location. Some believed it was a treasure, not many. One such treasure believer was the captain of the heavily modified ore trawler Spiteful, none other than intergalactic treasure hunter Blaz Manta, as cold and sharp as the void itself. Sprinter as the void itself. Springer of 1,000 tracks. Springer of 1,000 traps. Conqueror of 100 damned tombs, bedecked in treasure and accolades, and utterly without fear. The burly Sporovian sported an enormous sidearm of unknown provenance and a gaudy coat, blood red, bedecked in gold trim. When he leaned out of the call, the signal. When he leaned off the call. When he learned of the call of a signal none other could dare to approach. When he learned of a call of a signal that none other dare approach, the triumphant was too much for him to resist. Okay. The temptation was too much for him to resist, though the circumstances gave him pause. With his rough and tumble crew and adventuring fleet, he ventured towards the signal. The galaxy held its breath as he crossed into forbidden space and charted his own course.
course for the depths of it, the first ship to do so intentionally in living memory. Even most of his devoted followers, the other ships in his fleet, and the most intrepid news media stopped at the border of the forbidden space to wait for him at the terminus station, the closest outpost to the pitch-black area, with only his camera operators and a skeleton crew, all having said their goodbyes and being paid enough to live like kings should they survive. The spiteful entered the area of space far blacker than the rest, where not even stars twinkled. A haunting weight pressed down that chilled all of them, regardless of species, to the bone. In a galaxy of trillions of sentients, all rules are bound to be broken, except one. Nobody inhabited forbidden space, and nobody went there, other than the occasional foray by emergency services and military forces to guide a vessel that had wandered in by mistake. This had been a universal truth for nearly 10,000 years, and nobody had forgotten the reason. Things died there. All things. Nothing grew and nothing lived. Even on ships with specialized hydroponics bays, plants died, rations stopped nourishing. If enough time passed in the forbidden space, even fusion reactions and basic biology grew cold. The stars themselves were dead. No organism or machine had ever lived past a handful of days in the forbidden space, though occasionally cold, inert remains had drifted out. If you returned quickly, your body and technology would eventually function normally. If you stayed too long, you never left alive. The atmosphere aboard the treasure trawler was tense and silent as days ticked by. All knew they were on board. All knew they were on borrowed time. None knew exactly how much time that was. The voyage took several days at maximum burn, whereupon the fleet encountered, with shocking suddenness, in the utter blackness, a pulsing blue orb. The orb was nestled in an array of advanced and mysterious That's one way of doing it, Charles, but very few things prevent vocal strain. Also, my particular problem, so the surgeon reckons that I caught a virus, whatever virus, cold, strep throat, COVID, whatever, doesn't matter. It got into the nerve endings on my voice and caused paralysis. So if it does it in your face, you get, what's it? Damn it, gone. Bell's palsy. So if you get it in the nerve endings in your face, you get Bell's palsy. I got the same thing in my voice. So there's no sipping anything to prevent that, unfortunately. And then, yeah, work within your means. And the problem is you never really know, because you're like a day behind. So I can narrate past my limits quite easily. But tomorrow I suffer. Blue orb. The orb was nestled in an array of advanced and mysterious, energetically charged scaffolding, and just above what appeared to be a small, lit, glass-enclosed area. Sensors confirmed the orb was the source of the transmission. The trawler stopped 10 kilometers distant from the orb and sent out a cautious light scan pulse. Immediately, the orb reacted, reorienting and broadcasting a signal that effortlessly took over the intercom system and displays aboard the Spiteful. Herself a veteran of 100 treasure hunts and at least as many pitched battles, the Spiteful was armored and shielded like a dreadnought, and packed to the gills with systems so advanced that even the flagship of the stellar empires were put to shame. Fueled in large part by quasic fueled in large part by quasic array of alien technologies from past treasure hunts stuffed into every nook and cranny. Yeah, it's the past.
It sucks, or sucked. Still sucks, but can't really do anything about it. Most of my YouTube career was done with partial vocal paralysis, so at least it was partial, not full. Always that. The broadcast bypassed all of these measures and hijacked all systems effortlessly. A man stood in the image, human. The sparse crew rippled with shock. The creature's a legend and whisper. None had ever seen a real human in flesh, but all had heard, read, and watched enough about them to recognize one. One of the two legendary precursor species of the modern galaxy. The vanished creators of practically every baseline tech that modern life was based upon. The two species who emerged... The two species whose merged art was still the standard bearer of what... The two species whose merged art was still the standard bearer for what art could be. The one on screen looked middle-aged, but its eyes conveyed something ancient. Hello, traveler. I bid you welcome. My name was Dr. George Montgomery. If you are here, you have probably followed my beacon's message. I ask for your indulgence as I tell you my story. You are not in danger near the beacon. All aboard the fleet listened, rapt. They could tell the words were true, in some impossible to define way. All had felt the death aura of forbidden space fall away as they neared the beacon. About 100 years before my time, humanity had its first contact with alien species. Our fiction had always dreamed and had dreaded this moment in equal measure. We were advanced but still in our fledgling state and worried what we would find when they finally reached out. Our joy when the Ilari were not only friendly, but beautiful, cultured, artistic. It's hard to explain how glorious those days were. They uplifted everything in our society. Hunger and war were gone overnight. Transportation and pollution were solved. More than that, they made our art better, not just our science. They taught us new ways to make music, poetry, and film. Both of our species were intensely artistic, and as they intertwined, those traits blossomed ever greater. But even the Ilari could not have imagined the depths of human ingenuity. They were a very long-lived species. In fact, between that, their beauty, and their gentle nature, they were shockingly reminiscent of an artifact of human fiction, elves. To an extent, that was the... Elves. To an extent that there were theories about our species had known each other in some younger age. They lived about 800 years, naturally. They could never imagine we might outlive them. Their technology, with our understanding of our genome and our endlessly adaptive bodies, effectively eliminated aging. We could die whenever we chose. You would think everyone chose to live forever, but they did not. In fact, most stuck with the natural human lifespan, or added maybe 50 or 100 years. I was one that was chose to live longer. I was one of the best scientists humanity had to offer, and my breakthrough physics work with the pioneering Ilari scientists, Dr. Shayana and Luxurial, could not be allowed to fall by the wayside for something as petty as mortality. I started working with her when I was I started working with her when I was in my mid-50s, and during centuries of work together, we unlocked so many mysteries of the cosmos. And with practically no effort at all, we developed a love more powerful than anything that I'd ever imagined. She was the end of every sentence I started. She was the air in every breath I took. She still is. When I was about 500, Shayana was 600. The Zil attacked. You may or may not have heard of them. Either way, let me put your mind at ease. They aren't around anymore. They were a voracious, impossible foe. The combined sciences of humanity and the Ilari fought back with might, creativity, and raw power, unseen since the universe formed. It wasn't enough. The details don't matter, but we were going to lose thousands of planets, trillions of happy, healthy, luminous beings, mostly already gone.
The remainder pushed further and further back. The remainder pushed further and further back. Shayana and I turned our research into a nature of reality into something horrendous, searching for a way to stop them. We became the last bastion of humanity and the Ilari after Earth and Ilaria fell. Our research facility was now massive and part military factory, guarded by the remaining scraps of their allied fleets. We devised terrible weapons, relativistic railguns, mines that permanently shredded reality in haunting ways. Many more things that it would take ages to describe. Many more things it would take ages to describe if I had any desire to do so. And all of them took a terrible toll on the Zil, but they kept coming. Our final garbage, which we had actually devised some years earlier, but hoped never to use, was not a weapon that could be contained, not one that discriminated. It created a gulf that you crossed to get here, a vast space. We called it the crime, because that's what it was. You already know what it does. It kills everything. A murder agent equally effective on biology and technology. A murder agent that snuffs out the fusion reactions of stars and stops everything from a mammalian heart to a spark striking off flint. It bends physics, times, and reality itself, permitting nothing to live. I'll share no details on how it works or how it was developed, and we destroyed those records and all of our notes about a year after we deployed it, and we're sure we're sure that it worked. We had fought the Zil a long time. We knew their ship speeds. We knew the location of their worlds. Most importantly, we knew three things: that they were a hive species of the Queen, that their homeworld was within a volume of the crime would encompass, and that their ships could not escape the volume in time for it to matter. And that their ships could not escape the volume in time for it to matter. Humanity and the Ilari used the last of our resources and ships to stage a final massive attack on Zil space as a distraction to give us time to pack a massive container called the Time Capsule, with as much of our art, music, and history as we could. We launched it at the best speed our technology allowed, coated with the best stealth tech we had, and we waited until it had cleared the volume before we deployed the crime. We hope you found it. We did, murmured Blas, unaware that he'd spoken. Everyone knew the story of the pod. It had jump-started galactic civilization when it was found. It was the foundation of galactic culture. The tech of the pod had been a coup, but the art more so. It was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The art of the humans and the Ilari, art that eclipsed the art of all other species combined. Even more importantly, the pod had made clearer the degree to which species could thrive in peace together, charting a course for peaceful political relationships between neighbor species. Most galactic historians divided history into pre- and post-pod. The crime worked. The Zil are gone. So are we. So are the Ilari. So is everything else that lived in this part of the galaxy. Everything. But this beacon. I put everything I had into the design of this beacon while Shayana worked on the time capsule. It provided a tiny safe zone. Just enough space for Shayana and I to live in a humble apartment space with food, water, and plants. Not enough to save either species. Not even enough space for anyone else. Just enough space for us to live our lives together. And we did, in our little bubble. In our little bubble of functional reality, surrounded for 1 trillion kilometers on all sides by pure death. We loved so brightly, it put the stars to shame. We listened to the music of our cultures, watched the movies, danced the dances. We made love to the music of Mozart and Kallandai alike. We lived as many aspects as we could, a lot of which you hopefully found jammed into her brilliant capsule. She died when she was 805, Natural causes, after everything. It seems impossible. I buried her in the soil of our little station garden, per the tradition of her people. I've been alone here for about a year now, I think. I stopped keeping track of time. I think I'm ready to go. I've turned off my chrono implant. I'll age rapidly, and I'll rejoin my Shiana. The station computer will plant me with her when I pass. It won't be long. This beacon will remain. One day you'll get close enough to pick up the signal, and its technology is beyond anything galactic society is ever likely to be able to harm or turn off. But on the off chance I'm wrong, I ask you humbly to leave it alone, convey its message, and depart this place in peace. 2 species of impossible happiness and beauty stopped the advance of an unimaginable menace at the cost of everything. My love and I bore the pride of stopping them, but we also carried the impossible guilt of ending life itself for 2 species that loved so much. That loved life so much, and killing anything else that ever ventures here. If you are finding this, and did all of this to give life a chance, so that people like our 2 species might exist again in peace, and go on like our love endlessly, I can bear this weight no further alone. I miss her. Farewell. Please, don't forget us. Silence reigned on the bridge of the Spiteful. After enough silence, the skeleton crew and crew members... After enough silence, the skeleton crew and cameramen looked pensively at Blaz. Both had seen him wade through rivers of blood, and both were stunned to see his normally sharp eyes glistening. They waited orders to board and salvage. Set course out of the forbidden space. Reunite with the fleet. A shock rippled through the bridge, rigging the ship for forbidden space and setting up media to plunder contracts. A shock rippled through the bridge, rigging the ship for forbidden Rigging the ship for forbidden space and setting up media and plunder contracts had cost a tremendous amount. Leaving with nothing would hurt even Blaz's fortunes. Besides, if the humans' words about the technology of the beacon were true, even a small piece of that technology could be set them up for life. Blaz closed his eyes and nodded. I know what you're thinking. Yes, it'll hurt. And yes, I've plundered tombs. I've looted from kings, emperors, and cities. I've done it happily. But I'll have no part in desecrating this place. This is the only place of life amongst eternal death. This is not a tomb of ego and power. They gave everything. They took the guilt and sacrifice of 2 species on themselves. This is a grave of heroes. Whatever it cost us, it cost them more. The Spiteful moved away, slow and somber in the void. All species still avoid forbidden space, but none call it that. But none call it that anymore after Blaz made the meaning of the transmission clear. Right before he retired from his adventuring career and returned to his home and family forever, they now call this dead area of space the Gift. In the blackness of space, rendered as still and as cold as death itself, a small apartment remains lit. A pair of small trees still grow in the station garden, dutifully trimmed, watered, fed, and monitored by the station's systems. Above the apartment, a last bright beacon still glows, pushing back the darkness. This is the grave of humankind and Alari kind alike. It continues to pulse its message of love and sacrifice by 2 species and by 2 souls. End of story. No. Up. And there we go. Another story.
Up dooty doot. Always up doot. Big stretch. No bright light. Ooh. I think he's talking about Bell's palsy. I had a similar thing with my dad. Oh, it was about a decade ago. Scary as crap. Just wake up and half your face is just not working. And you always assume the worst. White Sagittarius, if you send me a message on Reddit as the author, I will add you to my list and then read the story when I get a chance, which I'm not guaranteeing will ever happen. And as for stories that you like, unfortunately, I still need to get the author's approval. So, I mean, you can send me a message about it, but there is a process. If you send it to, what is it, u/aggro squirrel, I think. Let me see. I don't even know my own username. Okay. There is my username. So if you send me a message there, I will try and answer it. If it's permission, I'll add you to the list. If it's a like, I will keep mind of it. You don't have to, if your own stories, you don't have to at me on every story. Just shoot me some permissions, and then when I'm scanning for new stories, I'll check your username. I shall be back momentarily. Just need to go get some more water. Maybe go to the bathroom. So there you go. Some music. And I'll be right back. And I'm back. Honestly, it doesn't feel like we've been going for 2 hours. I suppose it makes sense. Ooh. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've done 3. It's not much. I normally do 15,000 words. That's more about the amount of words than it is the amount of stories. So we've done 7,700, so about half a day's work, normally. But that's also dependent on the voice. No, Marcus, I don't. They are on my desktop, and I don't have that anymore. They also had my stream images, so. Well, at least I would prefer to be Captain Obvious than Private Parts. Especially in public. Where's the number? 33273 in another world with my War Factory. Alrighty, chat. Are we ready for another story? From Farm Witch, normally quite a good author. Also a fellow South African. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called In Another World with My War Factory, written by FarmWitch4275. The girl stood in front of the dwarven smith, casually flirting her long, thin, furry tail around. Okay, that does say flirting. She was flanked by 3 other girls. He wasn't too sure about what was going on or why it was going on, but he knew this cat girl was trouble. He had known she was He had known she was since she'd reached adulthood. Her friends, an elf, a human, and a wolf girl, had always offered him some kind of twist or bargain, or a secret flirt for some cheap service. He always rejected it, of course. He was a dwarf of honor, after all. No, wrong voice. Because it's a dwarf, we can only say it in one accent. Hello there, Genasi. Here to get me in trouble with my wife again for some cheap nails, He said with a raised brow.
She blushed, shrank a bit, and cleared her throat nervously. No, I found something, and I need you to tell me what it is, Mr. Varric, she said with a blush as her tail nervously wrapped around herself. She said with a blush as her tail nervously wrapped itself around her wrist. Waist, not wrist. She said with a blush as her tail nervously wrapped around her. She said with a blush as her tail nervously wrapped itself around her waist. She handed in the bundle of cloth, clearly quite a hefty one, judging by how she held it. Oh, what's up with this then? Why, it's so important about it that you wrapped it up in a cloth and bring it to a blacksmith of all people, he asked, taking the object. I found it lodged in dead smoke dragon's spine, she said. I found it lodged in a dead smoke dragon's spine, she said with a little care. Her statement could be heard across the market, forcing the bustle place to suddenly come to a dead stop. You did what? He yelled at her. Please, Genasi, don't tell me that you went dragon hunting. He dropped the object and grabbed her. As much as this young lady annoyed him, he wouldn't dare let her get into any danger. She hastily placated him and shook her head. No, I didn't. I was hunting for rabbits in the Red Forest this morning. I found a dragon dead on the ground. I never fought anything, I swear. A crowd was starting to gather, and she reached into her backpack and pulled out proof. The dinner plate size scale of smog dragon. The dinner plate size scale of a smog dragon, a shining iridescent scale of gleaming silver and black, shining with a sun and as sharp as a blade carefully wrapped up in a mithril cloth. Genasi's friends gasped and stood. Genasi's friends gasped and stood shocked at the sight of it. The market went into a vicious uproar at the sight of a fresh dragon scale, and dozens of people swarmed the smith's shop to take a closer look. The town guard responded quickly, preventing a riotous uproar, and settled everyone back to their business, while Genasi returned the dragon scale to its protective sleeve. All right, then, how'd you get this? Varric asked as he put the bundle of cloth on the work desk. Like I said, I found it lodged in a dead dragon. I had already told the city guard about it. They already seized the corpse. I was allowed to keep a scale. I did, however, pull this thing out of the spine before they took it. Nobody I know knows about more. Nobody I know knows more about metal than you, so, here it is, Genasi replied. All right, then. Let's see, Varric said, and unwrapped the cloth. Inside was an odd lump of twisted metal. An object that was cylindrical in shape. One end twisted and wrapped from a truly vicious impact, and the other end flat, covered in blood and soot. Okay then. Varric took the thing and cleaned it in a bucket of water, then took a look at it with a selection of magnifying glasses. So, any thoughts? Genasi asked after a few minutes. Covered in dragon blood, splinters of thick mithril, strong bones stuck inside grooves and shards. This definitely killed the dragon, or at the very least hit a piece of the dragon bone. Definitely some kind of projectile, but nothing I've ever seen. Whoever made this has a very, strange ideal of metallurgy. Whoever made this has a very strange ideal of metallurgy, Varric said as he looked at the odd thing. Care to elaborate? Genasi asked. Think of this thing to be like an arrowhead without a shaft or a fletch. But it's the most complicated arrowhead I've ever seen. A solid shell of hardened iron surrounded a solid core of steel. Judging by how the shape of it wrapped, it's likely how it was designed. The soft edge of the iron shattered and fragmented like glass, and squashed itself in, forcing the rod in the center to receive all its energy. That is amazing, Varric mused over the object. Is it good or bad? Serenia, the elven girl, asked. To be honest, it's both amazing and terrifying. To make a thing like this is quite a feat. To get it working to the point it kills a dragon, more so. But to make it fly through... But to make it fly enough, it looks like this when it hits. That's terrifying. No enchantments, no ruins, just solid block of metal with a bit of engineering. This wasn't made by my people, or the mountain elves either. Something entirely different made this thing. I love to try to remake this, Varric said with a strange grin. Okay. So what now? Genasi asked. I have no idea. I'd love to meet the people who made this. I'd love to meet the person who made this. It's ingenious. I have no idea I have no idea how they go about using it, though. It takes a stupid amount of force to wrap metal of this grade so badly. To warp metal of this grade so badly. I hope whoever built it I hope whoever built it only uses it for killing corrupted dragons, though. I shudder to think of what a thing like this would do to a man or mer, Varric said. Okay, well, the city guard should be done by now. I guess I can go there and try and investigate now. Might find some more of them, Genasi said with a smile. Well, it's a paltry sum, but here is 20 coppers for you. No sense in letting good metal go to waste, Varric said. He handed her 20 coppers for the object and began to heat up his He handed her 20 coppers for the object and began to heat up his smeltery. Now you let go. I've got work to do. The four girls revelled in the sight of 20 copper coins, despite the 30-weight gold dragon scale they had with them, and excitedly charged away towards the Adventurers Guild. The guild was chuffed, to say the least, on the acquisition of a smock dragon scale, and the girls left it there, so its exact value and application could be tested properly. With the finder's fee of the 5 gold coins, the four hastily hurried to the site of the dragon's corpse in the hopes that they might scavenge some more. Alas, the city guard had long since picked the site clean, leaving nothing but an enormous grey bloodstain on the ground. Genasi could clearly make out the outline of where the dragon had come through the trees. It was hit low, and hit hard, leaving the hole in the tree canopy before smashing into the forest floor. The girls all gathered around the bloodstain, and Mary... The girls all gathered around the bloodstain, and Mary the wolf girl was only one excited to see the stain on the ground. As she gleefully gathered up the residue from the dragon's blood elsewhere. Everywhere she could. Serenia and Maria the human bard, scouted around the area to see if anything could be found. Just as the party was clearing things up, Serenia's ears perked up. Thunder, she said, looking around. What? Genasi asked as she sifted through some grass. Thunder! I just heard something coming from the southwest, Serenia replied. I don't hear anything, Amari replied, angling her ears to meet the noise. It went away. There it is, Serenia said. Amari's ears perked up and followed the sound as well. Oh, I heard that one. Strange. Mima didn't call for any storms for weeks. Not a cloud anywhere. A wizard practicing magic somewhere, maybe? But alas, friends, no. The wizards and mages of yon fair kingdom hath been sent to yon harrowing place this tide. Magic, the short and sply. What the fuck? Magic tis in short supply, Mary said, showing her unique upbringing. Okay. Do you think that we should take a look and find out? Serenia asked. Well, I don't know. Maybe we should... I don't know. Maybe we should, 'cause, what if that, another blast of distant thunder, is that what killed the dragon? Maybe we should scout it at least and tell the guard. All for scouting, Genesi asked. Aye, the other three replied. With that, the four ladies trudged through the amberwood forest. Eventually, however, the thunderous roar ceased, and the only thing they could use to guide them was the general direction. Eventually, however, they left the forest clear on the other side and stopped dead in their tracks. The feeling of curiosity gave way to sheer terrified horror as the result of a battle of biblical proportions lay before them. The ground they walked on saturated in blood. Nobbins, trolls, and even a few gargoyles lay dead on the ground in the aftermath of a massive battle. Not so much a battle as a massacre of excessive proportions. After vomiting profusely, the girls' curiosity took them over, and they started investigating what atrocity happened. Poor Genasi saw the upper torso of a troll appearing as if a fireball tore it clean away from the caster's side. Poor Genasi saw the upper torso of a troll appearing as if a fireball tore it clean away from its appearing as if a fireball tore it clean away and cast it aside. A group of nobbins lay dead, riddled with small holes, some of which seemed powerful enough to tear off arms and legs. It was as if a storm of invisible glass arrows hit them like a storm and shredded them into pieces. Another troll, a very large one, had its head completely vanished, pieces of its bone and skull lodged into nearby trees. A gargoyle, one of the most dangerous beasts in the land, had been torn clean through, a giant hole right through the torso, and another gargoyle had both of its legs vanished from it. But one particular corpse, a simple body of a nobbin, stood out from the rest. It lay on its belly, a mangled mess of flesh and bone that looked like it had been squashed by a giant pipe. "Hark! This one was the most strange. I dare say a giant smacked this one with a large tree," Mary said as she investigated the body. The other girls carefully trudged through the blood and gore over to Mary. The other girls carefully trudged through the blood and gore over to Mary, and likewise looked at the body. A huge, strange gash, similar to that of a giant snake with a very thin, heavy body, had been left on the earth. This poor nobbin had been squashed by it. "Hark! There be two of these tracks. This is perchance a new fell denizen of the deep," Mary said. Mary said as she pointed to the other track, parallel to the one that squished the nobbin. "I sure hope not," Mary said. She yelped a quick wolfy yelp that meant that she saw something shiny. She charged at it, and when she crested the hilltop nearby, she squealed, "What in the hell? What are all these?" The other girls charged after her and saw the hilltop was covered in strange brass objects, strangely shaped empty cylinders, some large, most small, with an odd cylindrical shape that tapered off to a point. Amari had to cover her nose, not used to the strange burnt smell of the objects. But the two large tracks, like giant snakes, had curved a clearly visible path through the forest. Something big happened here. I don't like this. What kind of monster spits brass cylinders and slaughters 5 trolls, 60 nobbins, and 3 gargoyles? We need to tell," Genasi said. Genasi said. "I very much agree, sister." I very much agree, dear sister. Mayhaps they can better deal with this foul beast. Hark! What be that noise? It approacheth, Amari yelled. "Hide," Genasi said, and the 4 hastily hid in the trees. The 4 were taken aback, Genasi almost being crushed as a strange metal machine with round wheels, an unpowered wagon or magical enchantment of some kind, charged over the hill, barely missing taking off her head. The monster machine roared and landed with a heavy thud in the grassy knoll, its wheels carving a path, splattering the blood and mud-soaked grass in all directions. The 4 terrified girls cowered behind a few trees as the machine roared angrily, deploying some kind of large mechanical arm with a heavy claw. It painstakingly collected whatever intact bodies it could find, loaded them into the flatbed in the back, then quick as it came, charged back up the hill and vanished into the brush. The 4 stood dumbfounded, awed, terrified, but just staring at the trail of devastation it left. "So," Genasi said, "we're not going to inform the guard, right?" she asked. Her 3 friends said, "Nope. But we're all going to go after that thing like we have something to prove, and this will end in a crazy adventure that'll almost get us killed like 100 times, aren't we?" Genasi said again. "Yep," they all replied. Gods above, not again, Genasi said in frustration as her arm was grabbed and dragged along with them. The machine was long gone. The machine was long gone. Despite its heavy metal, it was shockingly fast and had vanished through the destroyed forestry with speed never seen. The girls simply followed the obvious trail of debris, blood, and its strange wheeled tracks. Eventually, the base of the Cragmire mountain presented itself, only for the tracks to start deftly climbing up at the road. Only for the tracks to start deftly climbing up the road that had been carved into the mountain. The girls approached and continued following the tracks, with Amari commenting on how it was only a few days old, judging by the raw sand and lack of protective coating on it. They followed the road for a mile, the freshly carved edifice shaking up the mountain's southern peak, snaking up the mountainside's southern peak, before coming across a small clearing between two cliffsides, wide enough for traffic, but also wide enough for youngling red dragons to snake through during their migrations. Serenia was the first to notice the distinct four-fingered claw marks in the rocks. "Hold it! This is red dragon territory. It's a migration point," Serenia yelled as they approached. "We've come this far. We've come this far. Let's just see what's on the other side, then run like hell once we know. Come on, just over that crest," Amari commanded and headed towards the gap in the rock face. They moved up and entered the clearing, their jaw drops, shocked and awe overcoming them as they surveyed the center of the valley. The mountain was a long-dead volcano with 5 peaks loosely shaped like a pentagram, with a huge crater in the center of it all. Inside this crater sat a huge complex with high walls made of strange woven metal and heavy set stone. The infamous red dragons flew in many directions, perching themselves atop strange metal and wood bars mounted in the cliff sides, or casually wandering about inside a large, perfectly carved holes dug into the mountainside. Nestled inside the large complex at the center were 2 buildings, strange structures in their own right. One was built like an ancient cathedral, small but intricately made with careful attention to detail. The other was a massive box with a large sloped roof, multiple chimneys and exhausts atop the roof, with a massive door on one side. The floors of this complex were a mixture of common sand, or a strange rock that had been used to pave the floor. Parked with care on these paved sections were some strange metal contraptions, including the very one they chased here, its cargo bed now empty of corpses. The girls stood dumbstruck as the large square building doors loudly and slowly opened to reveal another huge machine similar to the one they chased. This one's cargo bed, however, loaded to the brim with full versions. This one's cargo bed, however, loaded to the brim, filled with versions of the strange brass objects they had found. Thank you very much, Wyatt. Thank you for popping past. It is very much appreciated. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Strange brass objects they had found. Suddenly a roar was heard from their right as another odd vehicle came barreling up the road into the hill. The girls screamed as the thing charged at them, barely stopping inches from their faces. They stared at the odd thing as a strange humming noise, like the loud repetitive beating of dragon wings, emanated from the front of its odd rectangular face. A thing opened up to its left, a door followed by 2 heavy boots hitting the ground, and a human covered in heavy scarlet red leather cloaks, gilded with gold trim, walked towards them. He looked at them and went to the back where the girls noticed the machine had passengers, 6 red dragon younglings riding in the back, looking all too smug for some reason. "So, this world has elves and catgirls?" the man asked these passengers. "That and more," one of the dragons said. "At one point, are you going to tell me this?" At
At what point were you going to tell me this? The man asked again.
This is funnier, all 6 dragons had said at once, followed by a chuckling of the man's expense.
Great, my clients are frat boys, the man said, shaking his head in frustration, as the passengers laughed at him.
The man approached and looked carefully at the group and confused. The man approached and looked carefully at the group of confused, terrified women.
An elf, a lupine, and a necropora. And some chick dressed like it's the 17th century for some reason, he said, looking at them.
I wouldn't exactly call that dressed, to be honest, one of the dragons yelled after. I wouldn't exactly call that dressed, to be honest, one of the dragons yelled over the chuckling.
Oh, there's the migraine. Yep, there it is. Migraine. It's that. Oh, God, I don't get paid enough for this,
he said again, as he laid his head against the metal machine. You weren't getting paid at all, one of the dragons commented.
That's my damn point, you smuck.
The man yelled back in frustration to a chorus of laughter for his passengers. The man shrugged his shoulders and, with a frustrated sigh, held his hand in greeting to the group.
Hi, how are ya? Name's Caliban. Just call me Cal. I own this place, apparently.
The 4 stood there. Once again, their jaws opened in shock as they gingerly reached out to greet him. End of story.
Talking about migraines, mine's not stabbing me in the eye right now, so that's good. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. Stretch. Chaos, chaos. One of us, chaos. Oh, don't moan at me. Oh my goodness. Why are we yawning now? Oh, excuse me. Apparently my body wants to yawn now. I do apologize in advance for that, but there's nothing I can do to stop it. Good morning, James. I hope you're doing well. My body's had a hot day of migrating. Now we're yawning. Okay, stupid body. Uh, 2734. Yeah, well, always, yes. Yes. Unless you've had mouth surgery, then yawning isn't quite as fun as one would think. But other than that, yeah, well, yawnings are always better than migraines. Okie dokie. Oh, let's move the microphone a touch closer. Okay. Another story. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest narration of the web series. Nope, that's the wrong beginning. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and treat them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Humans Are a Myth, written by firefighter Raven. Korvac sat on the stone bench, enjoying the midday sun on his side. Hot days like this helped him feel just a little younger than his 100 cycles. He looked up at the statue that never failed to move him. He remembers the day it was erected, 60 cycles ago. The excited chattering of the next class drifted down the hall to him. This was his favorite part of the history class he taught. To most, it was just history, something that happened before their time. But to him, it was still alive in both of his hearts. "Come in and take a seat, hatchlings," raising his voice to be heard over the noise 30 hatchlings could make. Korvac sometimes got irritated by how difficult it could be to quiet 30 students, who were barely 10 cycles old. But then he remembered his childhood and how difficult it was. He preferred the happy chatter of the hatchlings over the fear and hopelessness when he was their age. "Quiet down, hatchlings," looking sternly at them. "So for today's lesson, I brought you to one of our people's most sacred monuments." He began to stroll to the statue before pointing at it. "Who can tell me what the statue depicts?"
Korvac.
Picking a student.
Korvac.
Gornak, picking a student from the back row. Kornak stood.
It's a human on it, Elba.
Korvac. Korvac nodded in approval. "Very good, Kornak. You may be seated. And who can tell me about the humans?" His arms clasped behind his back as he turned to look at them. "Rajdok." Rajdok rose and comfortably stated,
"They are aliens. My sire calls them just a myth, a legend."
Korvac looked out at the other students. "Now many of you agree that humans are a myth." Almost every claw shot up. Korvac shook his head and thought to himself, less than 90 cycles for real events to become a myth. "That is incorrect. That is incorrect, Rajdok. Your sire is quite wrong." Turning to look up with reverence. "I was there when the humans appeared to us, to save us. I was there when the humans appeared to us, saved us." An excited buzz coursed through the class. Several students asked questions at the same time. "Really? Were humans as tall as the statue? Where are they now? Did you meet any?" Korvac held a claw up to quiet them. "Yes, I was there when the humans came." He took a moment to gather his thoughts. "I wasn't much older than you are now, when we still lived in the Quathan." Another excited buzz at the mention of the former homeworld. The young grew up on tales of life before they had to leave their planet. To the young, it was so long ago that they forgot some Quexians were still alive from that time. Korvac stood in the front of them. "There were no Quexian Republic then, and we'd only recently left our world for the stars. We'd established a few colonies on our moons, but couldn't even explore our entire system yet."
My sire says the members of the ruling council of elders. My sire was a member of the ruling council of elders.
Korvac still felt proud of his sire. Nope, okay. My sire was a member of the ruling council of elders. Korvac still felt proud of his sire. "We sent messages to the stars, wondering if we were alone. We made first contact with the Kermarians, and from them we learned of many other races. Small groups of aliens came to trade and welcome us to the galactic community, one of which
was the humans. Unlike most aliens, they were fair in their dealings with us. It was one of their laws when it came to interacting with those races new to the stars. Quabec continued. We traded for new technology, including new tools to examine our system and to explore our world.
Fair enough, James. Fair enough.
It was one of these new devices that warned us of the dangers building inside our second moon, Petaxurk. As always, a rush of memories came back to Quabec when he taught this lesson.
What was the danger?
One of the students exclaimed. Quabec hid a smile as he replied, I'll tell you in a moment. Be patient. Pressure was building to an extremely high level, and there was concern it would endanger our science outpost there. Quabec took a breath. We didn't think big enough, that it would crack our moon and send chunks of it into our home world. At first, our scientists just studied the changes, but things changed once they saw them. But things changed once they saw the fault lines beginning to widen. And then the moonquakes became more frequent, more intense. They sent messages to scientists of various races, and they warned us it was just a matter of subcycles before it cracked wide open. And then they told us it would most likely destroy our planet when the huge chunks hit the surface. Our other moon couldn't sustain life. It was just another outpost, Quabec said. Quabec remembered the looks on the faces of the adults, the hushed whispers and discussions about what to do. We were still new to space and had very few ships capable of leaving our system, and we needed help if we were to survive. Messages were sent to all the races we'd met. He still remembered his sire's anger, but they either ignored us or offered us to sell/rent their ships for an exorbitant amount. A few offered us shelter, but in turn we'd like A few offered us shelter, but in return we'd be like slaves for them. Quabec still loathed the Kissenet for their so-called offer. We just about given up help. We just about given up on help from other races and made plans to get as many out as possible. Quabec enjoyed how engrossed the students were in his tale. We had no idea that someone answered our call, but humans did. A massive fleet arrived, thousands of ships of all sizes, warships, transports, luxury liners, cargo haulers, and shuttles by the hundreds to move us from the planet to ships. The humans apologized for taking so long to get there. My sire calculated how long it took to travel from Quothian to human home system. They left less than a rotation after they got our message. Looking at his students' faces, he remembered having that same look of astonishment. Quabec continued. Now, humans were known to be efficient, but the level of their preparation was beyond belief. They knew just how many of our people could fit per ship, with our most necessary possessions. Teams of humans worked with our people to dismantle our most important buildings, temples, factories, space launching facilities, monuments, schools, and others were just torn down for the material. Samples of native flora and such much. Samples of native flora and as much fauna as they could safely catch were taken aboard explorer ships set up to do just that. Surprisingly, they managed to get samples of almost all flora and large number of wild fauna. All the wild animals you see in the parks and the wild are from our home planet. It still left Quabec in awe at just how much they did in such a short time. They even completely evacuated and removed our outposts on both moons, and extracted large amounts of our resources for our use in rebuilding. Quavex smiled as he teased the students. Remember that when you complain that it takes too long to clean your dens. Quavex carried on with the tale. They did this without stopping for 10 rotations. They took us to a planet they'd been terraforming for their use, but hadn't occupied yet. We got another surprise when we landed and found another large group of humans had been putting up temporary shelters for us. Holes have been dug to transfer the water from our planet to save on time it can take to have... Holes had been dug to transfer the water from our planet to save on time it can take to have enough for all of us and our animals, until the moisture processors can supply enough to create the lakes and some of the rivers you see now. With this world being much closer to the Quarthan, they were able to make multiple trips back and forth. All of our people, except the ones that stayed to help, were transferred here in less than 8 rotations on Quarthan. That would be 6 rotations here. My sire was one of the volunteers and told me they worked until almost the last minute before it happened. Quavex vividly remembers the sorrow in his sire's voice as he described the death of our world. I was with my sire when the Council of Elders met with the humans that had been in charge of the evacuation. Quavex continued. The elders asked how they should repay the humans for their help, and one of them made a joke. He said, it was traditional to repay someone with pizza and beer when they help you move. We were confused, but all humans laughed at that. Quavex followed up by explaining it was a joke. They asked for nothing but our friendship, and not to be like the races that refused to try. They asked for nothing but our friendship, and to not be like the races that refused or tried to take advantage of us. Humans stayed 2 cycles to help us get our civilization in order again. Cities were built, flora planted, and then wild fauna released, Quavex said. They even helped us establish and build a fleet of our ships, not just military, but civilian and exploration vessels. Our warships are only slightly modified from the designs the humans gave us. Quavex finished with, humans are real, and we owe them a great debt. The students began talking excitedly about the lessons before one student raised a claw. Yes, Otak, Quavex was sure what the question would be. They always asked eventually.
Honored Elder, if the humans are real, then why haven't we seen them?
Otak queried. They were betrayed, Quavex stated simply. Many of his students gave an audible gasp at the statement. Several students spoke out with questions that all amounted to the same thing. Who betrayed them, and how? That'll be fully explained at a later date, but to summarize, Quavex took a sip from his container of water. We kept it on his belt. 29 cycles after we arrived on this world, a new race entered our galaxy. They were almost as malevolent as they were powerful, and they announced their arrival by destroying 8 colonies from various races, Quavex said. The only reply they gave to calls sent to them was simply, submit or die. But that was a lie. Quavex took another sip. He always needed fluids by the end of the lessons. From all the talking, he continued, the Barithian colony surrendered to them, and they still destroyed it. They enslaved some of the people, but they exterminated others in horrific manners. An object lesson, they said. The humans were furious. The Barithians were a peaceful people, and not very numerous, Quavex said. I asked one why they reacted the way I asked one why they reacted that way, and he replied, we don't like bullies, especially when they target our friends. So the humans called for war against the new race. We didn't even know their name. Quavex shook his head in disgust. The Great Council argued over it. Some assumed that they would only attack the lesser races and leave them alone. Others wanted to keep trying a diplomatic route. Others agreed, but would only protect their space. Ourselves and over half a dozen smaller races answered the humans' call, but we could only muster 60 real warships between us. When the human ambassador had raged at the more powerful races, he warmly welcomed us to join the effort. The only one of the most powerful races. The only one of the most powerful races, the Kathrunka. The Kathrunka promised support, but being on the other side of the galaxy, it would take some time to get a fleet to human space. It was at this point the human ambassador shamed the rest of the council by saying they didn't need them. They'd just be in the way, and promptly exited the chambers with us joining him. Korvac leapt. Korvac kept on with the story. The Kurthronka ambassador barely said anything before he nodded at us and left to contact his government. The human ambassador thanked us for being loyal friends and got us in contact with their fleet command. Another student raised a claw.
Then what? Did we fight?
Korvac proudly replied, "Yes, we did. I was serving on one of the cruisers and made sure I got to go help our friends. The humans only requested 5 ships from each of us. They didn't want us defenseless. So we joined with the human armada. It was far larger than the one we saved. It was far larger than the one that saved us, and it was all warships. I was told there were over 100,000 ships of various sizes, from massive carriers to small starfighters. But the enemy brought more and bigger ships. Images of those battles filled Korvac's head before he continued. The humans had us in reserve to counter their flank attack. I'd never even heard of a battle this massive, let alone seen. Korvac's heart began beating faster as he remembered the terror and exhilaration of the fight. The humans drove straight into the center of the enemy formation. It was so chaotic that it was almost impossible to tell friend from foe. Another student spoke up.
But what about you and our ships?
Korvac continued. We did as asked and attacked any ships that got around the flanks, mostly fighters and destroyers, but we did have to gang up on a large cruiser too. And after 3/4 of a rotation, the battle was over. Korvac looked at each student. Only a few enemy escaped and none of their capital ships. But the humans paid a very heavy price for victory. 80% of their fleet was destroyed, and the rest heavily damaged. All but a dozen capital ships were floating wrecks. Our little squad only lost 3 ships, destroying the rest. Our little squad only lost 3 ships, destroyed with the rest damaged in one way or the other. Our little squad only lost 3 ships, destroyed. Our little squad only lost 3 ships destroyed, with the rest damaged in one way or another. The human casualties were in the millions, dead, wounded, or missing. Korvac looked at the scars on his right arm from the exploding console after a massive hit. And the next 2 rotations were spent rescuing survivors from wrecks and sending wounded to hospitals all over the space, including our wounded. Unlike other races, the humans didn't differentiate in treating their wounded and their allies. Korvac continued. Aside from the Zathreks, we went to the same hospitals as their wounded. The Zathreks could only go on a special hospital ship that would take them home since their biology made it difficult to treat it in a standard human med facility. But the humans treated them as a priority to get home. A small Kurthronka fleet arrived a rotation after the battle. Only 25 smaller ships that had been on convoy duty were much closer than the home fleets. They were sent ahead of the others.
Is that how they were betrayed? That the others didn't show up?
A student named Polunka, a student named Polunka asked. No, the enemy did not take their defeat lightly, and they launched antimatter torpedoes into the stars of systems inhabited by human colonies. Even humans' home system was targeted, and their cradle world was destroyed, Korvac replied, unable to keep the sadness from his voice. The betrayal came from the one of the races of the council. Either scared of the enemy or angry at the humans, they relayed the location of all the humans' major colonies. Another student, Zen asked.
Who did that?
Quebec answered, We don't know. But since the location of one of the destroyed human military bases was only known to less than a dozen races, someone gave it up.
So that killed all the humans?
Quebec didn't see which student asked. No. Less than 1 million humans survived. On a few minor colonies and stations, Quebec continued. They spent the next 10 cycles rebuilding their military and constructing 5 massive motherships. The humans wanted revenge, and they were going to find the enemy's space and finish what they started. Quebec took another sip. And so all but a few humans left this galaxy to take the war to the enemy. The ones that stayed all died eventually. So we built the statue to remember them and their friendship with us, Quebec finished. And now, my inquisitive little hatchlings, the lesson is over, and it's time to go home. End of story. Updoot. It is definitely extreme. Welcome, welcome, all the new people. We've jumped from 7 to 17 on YouTube. Hello, 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 welcome. Yeah, so the migraine seems to be under control at this point, which is good. But that is also pretty much today's recording done. Yep. Yep, that sounds about right, Lord Walpex. Peck around and find out. On a galactic scale. Well, one can hope, James. One can hope. Only time will tell, unfortunately. Yes, definitely. Charles. Alrighty. Approaching the 3-hour mark, which is great. Thank you all for spending your time with me. It's very much appreciated, especially in this attention economy of the late 21st or 2020s. It's very much appreciated that you chose to spend your attention on me. I'm very much appreciative, as I've said 3 times now. Thank you very much. I will be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Well, not quite the same time. Different day, same time, same place. I hope you all had a fantastic day, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. And I'll see you then. Goodbye.